going through a book. In the summer, it's sort of a hit or miss. Everyone's traveling on vacation and stuff, I know. And so we like to jump into a series that's a little more like kind of one week doesn't depend on the next. Not that we don't try to make every week that way. So this summer, it's been fun. We've been going through the book of Proverbs. And Proverbs is sort of, it's kind of smack dab in the middle of the Bible if you've never been there. There's some great chapters in there. And really, it talks about how to live out right knowledge in the world. And so there's God's knowledge, and so it's the application of knowledge, because you can know things are the right way to do things. Wisdom is then living that out. I know I should wear a helmet when I go biking. And if you've seen all the accidents and things that I normally have, it's wise. So knowledge is knowing I should wear a helmet. Wisdom is actually doing it. And so wisdom is this skill of life and how to live. And really, our decisions and things affect where we end up. Now, I'm fascinated by genealogy. Probably I get that from my dad, because I'm the product of a lot of people's decisions. Like at some point, my ancestors decided to move here. At some point, they decided, part of them decided to leave Pennsylvania. And so, I ended up in the rebellious 3 counties known as Delaware. And our life's decisions affected by our past and then also our future decisions. I was thinking about this week. It's like an airplane. There's lots of decisions that get you to an airplane, right? And then once on, you're going for a ride. And then you land, and once you land, new decisions can be made, but there are consequences, and our life's trajectory is affected by the decisions we make. And so Proverbs is this book that talks about the decisions we make and how they'll direct our lives. And specifically today, we're going to look at what Proverbs says about the effect money can have on our life and behavior. Now, every time we talk about money in church, it gets weird, right? Because, don't worry, we're not going to pass the plate around. We don't even pass a plate. There's a bucket in the back. I forget to tell people. I have new people come up all the time. They're like, I don't know where to put this. I'm like, neither do I. No, there's and there's a lot of bad things, but money is a part of life, and having a right view of it is important. And so we're gonna jump into Proverbs chapter 30, and I'm going to start in verse 7. It says, "Oh God, I beg 2 favors from you. Let me have them before I die." And so the author is asking God for stuff. Now, if you could ask God, if you could pray for 2 things, what would you ask for? Don't read ahead, because you'll know what the right answer is supposed to be. But think about what you would ask for. Kind of like if a genie shows up and you get 3 wishes. I don't know why it's always 3 wishes with a genie. I don't think they exist, but that's another thing. Although I did like the I Dream of Genie as a kid, and anyway. But most of us would ask for what? Unlimited wishes. That's always the first thing you ask for. But many of us would ask for we'd ask for health, right? We especially if you have health struggles, or maybe you'd be like like a good person ask, I'd like to end poverty in the world. I'd like to end world hunger. Or maybe true love. For many of us, it would be to win the lottery, if we could wish for one thing, right? When the lottery got to $1 billion, there are people who never play the lottery. But when it gets to $1 billion, people are like thinking about it, right? I didn't play. I was praying somebody would give me a ticket that would win, and then I could bless all of you. But what we ask for reveals often our deepest desires, right? It's what we want, and sometimes God answers our wishes and desires, but also sometimes His answer is not always what we might want. I think most of us would ask for a hashtag blessed life. Like it's so many things, and the things that we think are, and I have a personal animosity toward the hashtag blessed, because a lot of times I see things, people post things, hashtag blessed, that are, it's awesome that you're blessed, but what I see them, like I got a new truck, hashtag blessed, I'm like, that is a blessing, but I think sometimes our emphasis is on material things a little more than it should be. That's a longer sermon for another time. But so here, why would the author not ask for money? I think most of us who are Americans, a lot of our stuff would go down that, it seems counter to the American dream. But often, I think things in God's economy, God's ways, often are different than the way we think of things. Now, Proverbs is an interesting series because they're kind of like Proverbs, if you read through the book, there's little chunks of Proverbs and things that fit together. And one of the things we asked during this series, I asked people to give me like the they're the proverb they like me to see address, or maybe some of your favorite proverbs and things. And so we go through the ones, and one of that was recommended on the Facebook group, and I'm not sure if it was a joke or so. They're not here. I know they're probably watching online today because they watched online last week. And I think it might be a joke because of the person who posted it, but they posted this one, which is the first 3 verses kind of ahead of this. It says, the sayings of Agur, the son of Jakah, contain this message. I am weary, O God. I am weary and worn out, O God. And most of us, we're like, yeah, I get that one. I'm weary and worn out. But verse 2 is the one. I'm too stupid to be human, and I lack common sense. I have not mastered human wisdom, nor do I know the Holy One. Now, I don't know if it was a joke or not. I think maybe it was quoted to them by their spouse. But that was a joke. But it's kind of a funny proverb. If you read that, you're like, what in the world? I'm too stupid. And I think that it's tricky to translate things sometimes. And this is, this is one of those things. I think the ESV treats it better than the NLT. It says this. It says, surely I am only a brute, not a man. I do not have human understanding. I have not learned wisdom, nor have attained the knowledge of the Holy One, who has gone up to heaven and come down, whose hands have gathered up the wind, who has wrapped up the waters in a cloak, who has established all the ends of the earth. What is his name? What is the name of his son? Surely you know. And what the author is getting at, and this is going to sound similar to those of you who've read the book of Job, is sort of, God has done things much beyond us. And so a lot of times we lack knowledge and wisdom, and that's what the author is saying here. The author doesn't understand all of God, but he wants to. And we have the advantage now of knowing. I love that line, I don't know the name of his son. We do. It's Jesus, right? And so this is the acknowledgement that God's ways sometimes are beyond our ways. We want fast, right? We're Americans. We like everything fast. I have a friend, we were in a text group, and every time we send a car or something to him, he's like, I want an LS swap. We want to put a big, powerful engine there. I sent him this tiny little van that I want, because I think nothing's funnier than a large man in a tiny car. And I sent this tiny little, Japanese van that I'd love to get, because it's, really ridiculously small, and I would look hilarious in it. And he's like, yeah, we could put 2 in that one, because there's cargo room. We like things fast, right? But God often does things slow. 1,000 years is like a day to God. We want easy, right? Who prays for a more difficult life? I feel like someone prayed that for me already, right? We don't want the difficult things, but God often uses those things to teach us, to shape us. And so God's ways are not our ways. And so I think most of us would ask for lots of money, but it can be problematic. And in verse 8, we're going to get there. It says, first, help me never tell a lie. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I'm poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name. And so the ESV says it with a lie. It says, keep falsehood and lies far from me. And so, a good way to understand this chunk here, here's Jeff's paraphrase translation. I want to live a life that honors you in all ways. Provide for me so that I'm not tempted to sin, but don't provide for me so much that I forget you. Because there are the 2 dangers, right? If you don't have what you need, and we see this in a lot of context. I think if you work with people, you see this. You sometimes acquire it by any means necessary, right? And hopefully none of you grown up that level of poverty, that you'll take what you need, because there's no other way to get it. The other is, and I think this is hard for a lot of us, is we have so much that it's easy to forget God. It's easy to kind of go and think we've got it all ourselves. But God comes, Jesus comes so that we can have this new life, this full life. And we are all a little jacked up, I always say, right? Yep. Yeah, it was funny because Julie actually posted a memory. If any of you saw it on Facebook, I was on Facebook a little more this week than lately. I just haven't wanted, but I just funny pictures. And she posted the one I'd forgotten even I did the sermon, but now I remember I hid like a 2x4 and I stuck it in my eye. It's because Jesus said something about we look at the speck in our eye, but we got all of us have a big plank in our own eye, and so we all have jacked upness. We have things that are wrong, but we were created for a different kind of life. We're created for this better life. Jesus said, John 10:10, the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they have life and have it to the full. And so there's this full way of living. And often we live somewhere in this tension of, I don't think we're created for poverty so that we couldn't have anything, but riches, and the problem in America is most of us are rich. If you don't think you're rich, go around the world. Go to different places. Those of you who've had that privilege have seen poverty on levels that we don't understand. And often, when we have resources, we forget who God is. And sometimes, people see, I think, a faithful life in Christianity, and it's like, oh, don't do this, don't go there. But God has given us constraints for our own good. And I think about anyone have a fenced-in backyard? I don't, because it would be hard to fence in my back. But the great thing, like when you've got a fenced-in backyard, it's like you can let your dog out, doesn't go anywhere. You can let your kids out, they don't go anywhere. My kids would crawl over the fence. But, some of you have wild kids like that. Mine have always been there. But the constraints are for what? They're for our own good. And so we might want unlimited wealth. We might want $1 billion. But given the $1 billion, it might be more of a struggle than we think, right? And so we have this different way of life, this different way of living if we follow Jesus. Now, we don't live the old life. It's when you go from the old life to the new life in Christ, it's like passing from death to life. Romans 6 says this, starting verse 12. Do not let sin control the way you live. Do not give in to sinful desires. Do not let any part of your body become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Instead, give yourselves completely God. For you were dead, but now you have new life. So use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right to the glory of God. And so we were dead, but now we're dead to sin. We're made to live differently. We live differently when we can become followers of Jesus. Many of us used to run to sin. Right? I mean, some of us can think of that. The things we would run to do. And now, the idea is we run from sin. And so we were dead and he gave us life. Ephesians 2 says this, verse 2, you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins. You used to live in sin just like the rest of the world. All of us used to live that way, following the passion, desires, and inclinations of our sinful nature. But God is so rich in mercy, he loved us so much that even though we were dead because of our sins, he gave us life when he raised Christ from the dead. And so if we're believers and followers of Jesus, we have to live differently. We're dead to sin. Dead has no middle ground, right? Like you either are or you aren't. It's not like Princess Bride. He's mostly dead. It's some of you haven't seen that movie. You need to. It's a great classic. In the end, either you follow Christ or you don't. Either your life lines up to or you don't. We don't live that old life. And I think of it as, zombies are such a popular thing in our culture right now, right? Like, I've seen ads of zombie apocalypses coming. Companies even market to it. We all think there's going to be zombies, and I don't know whether you picture zombies like Walking Dead or like Thriller, whatever your zombie type is. I don't know, but you don't want to live like a zombie. It's a zombie Christianity is like you kind of hold on to that death. We passed from death to life, and so when we have this new life, we don't live that way. And there's all kinds of life. I love Southern Delaware. Anyone like, it's funny. I was talking to someone yesterday, random person. I was talking to him, and I was in the course of the conversation. We're talking about Delaware, different areas of Delaware, and he couldn't believe. He's like, "You're like the only fourth native Delawarean I've ever met," or something. I'm like, "Really?" Because I feel like everyone I meet is either, well, you're either from here or you're not. But that's a joke. Anyway, I love Delaware life though, and there's all kinds of like The Salt Life stickers, you see those on the back of cars, right? Because you either kind of, if you're from this area, you get it. It's like the Salt Life, the beach, the fishing, there's all the different things we do there. Or, the LSD stickers, which, if you're not from here, you're thinking everyone's into like psychedelic or drugs. It's lower, slower Delaware. And there's just this different way of life and different way of living. We always called it SLD, but I think it doesn't make as funny a sticker for people. Slower, lower Delaware. Or, Dewey Beach, what's their slogan? A way of life. At least some of the stickers are. But there's all these ways of life. And so really, the Christ life is a lifestyle, an adaptation. We have to say no to dead living, and it means living for Jesus. And here's the thing. We often go off track in many areas of our life, right? That's the thing I like about the Proverbs is we tend to, we go through books and we speak expositionally, meaning we generally unpack a book of the Bible and we go through it and go, this is what it says. Because, again, the Bible is like a software agreement. You click, how many you download software, you upware, your phone OS, and you click, I have read the terms and agreements. Have you ever read the terms and agreements first? No, you don't. You just click OK. And a lot of times the Bible, we treat it that way. We say, OK, I'm a believer and follow Jesus, and so I click OK. But it's so important to know what's in there because then we don't live the dead way. We don't live the old way. And so Proverbs is a little different because, it hits some topics, but there's, it's a topic that's explored throughout the rest of the Bible as well, but it's telling us concisely, this is the way we live. And so we can often get off track. So back to verse 9, it says, For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I am too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name. And again, if you're poor, there's the temptation to live in ungodly ways in order to not be poor, in order to satisfy your needs. And there's often danger in the extremes. For many Americans, we have to be concerned about being rich. And, the pursuit of wealth is like an American, it's just the way we live, right? A lot of us. But there's this danger in riches. And it's interesting because, again, you see it throughout the Bible. If you look at the story of the Exodus, we talked about that recently in one of the sermons. I don't know. I can't remember all my sermons. You can't either, though. Who knows what I preached on last week? I do. Ooh. Now you have to go back and check the podcast to see what we did. But for many Americans, we're concerned about riches. There's the story of Exodus 5. There's Moses. He comes, and I think we kind of picture it. Picture Moses. He's standing there in the midst of this wealth. He's talking to Pharaoh, and if you don't know the story, he grows up in Pharaoh's household. He grew up with that wealth. He grew up with that power around him, and he shuns that to go hang out with the Israelites. There's a murder involved. There's fleeing. There's the desert. He comes back, but he's standing in the midst of everything he shunned, and Pharaoh is sitting in the middle of everything, and Moses is like, hey, let my people go. And Pharaoh's sitting in all the wealth, the symbols of power that Moses left, that Pharaoh embraced. And Pharaoh says this, he says, is that so? Who is this Lord? Why should I listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. Because in his wealth, in his power, they literally thought he was a god. You have no need for God. And that's an extreme case. Most of us aren't going to be in a position where we're going to rule over Egypt. Most of us won't even get to go to Egypt. But often it's power and wealth that make our hearts deny God. And sometimes, I often say sometimes we don't have wealth, wealth has us. The story of the rich young ruler, he approaches Jesus, and we've gone over this one before, and the rich young ruler, he comes up to Jesus, and he's kind of like, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And he turns out he's obeyed all the commandments and everything. He's kind of like, he looked great on the outside. He's like a Boy Scout who helps old ladies across the street. I mean, he's the guy. He's sort of the poster child for right living. And Jesus challenged him. He goes, I'll tell you what, give up all your wealth and follow me. And if you read the story, he goes away sad. Why? Because the problem was he could follow a lot of the commands, but wealth had him. And so a lot of times we think we have wealth, we think we have money, but in reality it has us. It's something we can't give up. Because inside, he was full of greed. And it's hard to trust God when you love money. Do you have possessions or your possessions have you? Now, here's the thing. Money isn't evil. And I think some people get that wrong idea, that somehow money is evil. It's not an evil thing. Well, actually it is. Everyone dump it out of your pockets right now. We'll pass the bucket around. I'll take the evil from you. No, money is not evil. Money is neutral. The problem is sometimes my heart isn't neutral, right? And we can desire things. Money is neutral, our heart isn't. Wealth can draw our hearts from God. And we need to learn to be content whether we have a little or whether we have a lot. There's a, Philippians 4:13, we quote that for everything, right? I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, right? We like that one. That's one of those Instagram verses. Like if you Google that verse, man, you're going to find lots of things on Google Images and pretty things, and people do tattoos and everything. And it's like almost every, my family does like sports well. We like to pick things up and put things down. It's like, and I do some sports ministry stuff where I'm with people, and almost in every context, someone will throw out Philippians, because they're like, yeah, we're going to win this for Jesus, and that's all good. But if you look at the verse in context that we have in the past, starting back, kind of every verse has a context. So you back it up to 4:12 says, "For I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it was a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." It's not about winning games. It's about learning contentment and being able to worship God in the midst of whether you have a lot or you have a little. And that's sort of the same thing that in a different way that the writer of the Proverbs is saying. It's, can you have a little and be happy? Can you have a lot and still worship Jesus? And that's a struggle for most of us. It's not a magic verse. It's not something you could tattoo on yourself and do all things. I follow C.S. Lewis on Twitter, which is, he's dead, I know, but people post for him. You're like, yeah, I know. Bye. But he said this week. He says, "Don't let your happiness depend on something you may lose." C.S. Lewis said that. I don't know who tweeted it for him. But often we can, right? Because in America, I think a lot of times, now I love America, pro-America, have a little American flag pin, but a lot of times in our culture, what makes us happy is cash. Hashtag blessed might as well be hashtag cash. We're often guilty of this, letting our happiness depend on our stuff and our situation. Jesus says the familiar words in Matthew 6, chapter 6. Now, it's interesting. I was cutting the grass yesterday, and I don't know why I was thinking about the funerals I do. Probably because I was thinking about this verse and everything. And, I do a lot of funerals, and it's interesting doing funerals because people who are completely, not particularly religious in life somehow want me to come and bless the funeral and everything, and I don't mind. I have a lot of relationships with people in the community, and it's interesting because inevitably you have to decide what to put in a service, and it's always kind of, you want to. I don't know why you picked me to do your funeral. I want to put the fun in funeral. I want to tell jokes, but people are not in the mood. But one of the things I almost always do is end up praying the Lord's Prayer, right? We kind of throw it on there it's just kind of, you can mindlessly go through the Lord's Prayer. Anyone ever mindlessly say the Lord's Prayer, "Oh, Father," you just mumble, and get to the end, amen. No, you're like, oh, you're not, you don't, of course. But the rest of us struggle with that. It's something I often pray at funerals, but I think sometimes we don't listen to the words. And it says this in Matthew chapter 6, in part, says, "Give us today the food we need," and give us today the food we need. King James says it, because we'll drop a little King James for Dana here. It says, "Give us this day our daily bread." Right? I do like the way they say that. And it's kind of our daily bread, the food we need. And, we like that, because, we say that. But in America, I think most of us, we have a full fridge. A lot of us, right? Not everybody, I know. We have a food pantry, and I deal with, giving people food who don't have food. But a lot of us in America, middle class, we have a full fridge. It's like, Lord, thank you for the week's food I already got in here. And then there's some canned goods that will eventually donate to the food pantry. I can tell when you do it because we get like odd things that nobody ever would buy. Anyway, we'll take them though because we'll find somebody who will eat them. but we have a full fridge and we still have nothing to eat though. It's like, anyone go to the fridge, you're like, oh, there's nothing to eat. There's like more food than most people in the world have at their disposal, and you're like, no, there's nothing to eat. We have an extra freezer full of food, and we still can't find anything to eat. We have extra freezer and an extra, fridge in the garage, and we still can't find something to eat. But when we have wealth in excess, it often makes us feel less dependent on God, right? In the culture in which Jesus was, a little more dependent. The crops don't come in, people don't eat. Our crops don't come in, we just order them from somewhere else around the world. And when you don't have in excess, it makes us dependent on God. Now, hunting season's coming up. I don't know. I may give up hunting. I don't know. My kids haven't taken it up, but I love go sit in the woods with a bow and arrow, and I love being out in the woods and everything. And generally, it's a good time to pray, and I do have great prayer times, but I have to admit, part of my prayer is, Lord Jesus, thank you for your wonderful, beautiful creation. Now, if you could send a big brown fuzzy thing in front of me, in the name of Jesus, that would be awesome, and I will take it and I pray that my arrow be true. I pray that my shot be right. Because, I tend to want a deer when I'm hunting, because I've given up my day to do that usually. But here's the thing. When you get to I've had 3 and I'm still out in the woods and my freezer's full, I'm just not, my prayer is more like, God, whatever. I'll take another one if it comes across. Because when you have an excess, and some of you are like, when you get 3, call me. But, when you have in excess, you tend to not depend on God. Your prayers are different. And that's what the Proverbs getting at is, when we have too little, we can be tempted to go in a direction we shouldn't for money. When we have too much, we forget who God is, or don't include him. Sometimes, pastors aren't immune to this. I'm not going to mention in detail the story, but I constantly see stories. I saw this on Twitter, and then I saw it like in news, and it's like a pastor complaining because church didn't give him luxury items, and I got a list of things I need you to buy me this week. I'm kidding. It's funny because it was a watch, and I forgot my watch this morning, but we did go back and get it because I forgot other stuff this morning. But it's not an expensive watch, just a watch because I could tell the time. But, even people in ministry aren't immune to this, right? It's like there's this love of the bougie that we struggle with because we want to have all the nice things. Now, again, it's not bad to have nice things, but at what point do the nice things have you? And I think that's especially a struggle in America because we have so much, right? We have a ridiculous amount of stuff, and we have storage things filled with things, and but we have to learn to trust that God will provide. I think it's sort of a beautiful picture of that is most of us, if you grew up if you didn't have anything, maybe it was a struggle, but a lot of us, if you grew up in the middle class, assuming you had parents who cared for you, my lunch would be packed. I'd get to school, I'd open it up, and there was food to eat, right? You trust that your parents were going to pack. I had a little Star Wars lunchbox. I wish I still had that. It's probably worth money now. And the original, I didn't have to think, is it full? Because you trust. And that's the kind of trust and dependence we need on God. We're not trusting in wealth, but trusting in the God who gives us stuff. And we can trust God for our daily bread and learn to be content and grateful no matter what. Now, right after the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says this, verse 19, "Don't store up treasures on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your hearts will be." Moths and rust, basically deterioration. A lot of the things we have that we value so much are garbage at some point, right? Like the town of Wyoming yard sale's coming up. A couple years ago, we all pulled our stuff together and sold a massive amount of stuff and then had to have trucks hauling it away for hours afterwards because we still had so much stuff left over after selling a bunch of stuff. Because most of us, we have a few things that we really valued. And I can't tell you how many times I've been like getting rid of something going, man, I remember buying this and I had to have it. And now I just need to get rid of it because I need more space, you know. And it's funny, I give stuff to Goodwill and then see it at Goodwill and you're like, yep. So apparently the thing I gave away that I thought was so great is now worth $1 and no one's buying it at Goodwill. But a lot of our stuff just rots and rusts. You know, it's funny because most of you see the Mustang I drive sometimes, and it's like, it looks good at like 25 feet away. When you get up close, though, what's the problem? Rust bubbles. You know, it's rusting and going away. The things we love just disappear. And that's just the nature of stuff. And thieves break in and steal. When you have a lot, you start worrying about that lot, right? If you ever travel, whenever there's a sign that says, watch out for pickpockets, that's the best place for a pickpocket to stand. You know why? When you see the sign for watch out for pickpockets, what do? Well, now they know where your treasure is. And so, you have to worry about it. And it's funny because even with digital currency, like, man, people have figured out ways to steal your Bitcoin. And other digital currencies. I'm not up on all the digital currencies. Some of you are. That's awesome. But we struggle. People find ways to steal it. And so, they say, mo money, mo problems, man. And then in America, we've made retail an art. I mean, we've always kind of like taken like a holiday like Christmas and made it about the presents, right? Like we spend Thanksgiving thanking God for all his blessings. The day after, we go out and fight people. People die every year on I keep wanting to call it Good Friday, Black Friday, because they're out there, fighting over a TV, right? We thank God and then we fight. That wasn't enough. We've invented Prime Day. Anyone shop on Prime Day? I did because there were some things I needed and we wanted some good deals. So we wait till Prime Day when they're going to go on sale. But it's a holiday we make just for consumer culture. It's the day where we celebrate just to celebrate because we need Christmas in July. We need Prime in July. I don't know. Wherever your treasure is, there the desire of your hearts will be. For some, we may not cling to stuff, but we'll still cling to money to buy experiences. And that's what the Proverbs say. We need to be careful when we have wealth that it doesn't draw us far from God. As followers of Jesus, we need to follow. And that means our worldview and outlook on money needs to be his outlook. Now, again, I'm not telling you have to give away all your money. Money's neutral. It's a tool. It's like a hammer. It's something, it helps. But we do have to be aware in our hearts whether it's something that's pulling us astray. My wife sent me this verse this week, and I'm just going to shout out to her, footnote her. I loved it because it's kind of fit along with what I was thinking. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 and 16, out of the Message, which I don't know why I'd never read it in the Message before, because I do like reading the Message sometimes, and I just preached 1 Peter, didn't I? Like, I don't know, last year? I don't know. Anyway, everything roll. I'm like, I just preached something sometimes, and it's like 3 years ago. Says this, so roll up your sleeves, get your head in the game. Be totally ready to receive the gift that's coming when Jesus arrives. Don't lazily slip back into the old grooves of evil, doing just what you feel like doing. And I think that's such a great picture of, because you might know these truths about money, but it's easy to slip just back in and end up doing the same thing. You didn't know any better than you do now. And here's the part I really love. As obedient children, let yourselves be pulled into a way of life shaped by God's life. A life energetic and blazing with holiness. God said, I am holy, be holy. And so we live this life, this full life, this new way of life, this new way of living. And that means how we look at money. It means, like last week we talked about words, how we use words. All the things about our life are shaped by following Jesus if we let it. We live differently when we know Jesus.